If you've got your Bibles, I'd like you to turn to Acts chapter 7, please. We're going to continue to look at Paul. And he says in chapter 7, and most scholars and commentators see this as Paul describing what he was going through before he came to Christ. Before he came to Christ. And there's reasons for that if you look at the text. And in there he says, I am a wretched man. I am a wretched man. I am a man who deserves to die. I am a man who tries to do the right thing, but I just can't do the right thing. And you think, man, that's not what you were saying publicly. What you were saying publicly was that you were perfect, without blemish, without fault. You were saying you were a true Hebrew of a true Hebrew. You were presenting yourself as someone who was incredibly religious. And now you're letting us know, you're letting us into your heart, that wasn't really the case. Behind the mask, behind the facade, which we're all pretty good at wearing, there was a deep emptiness and a deep ache. Verse 3, now as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven shone around him. Verse 4, and falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Oh, by the way, I should just recap on that one. This is told in Acts chapter 26, verse 14, this way. When Paul retells this story, he says this, and when we had all fallen to the ground, so those who were travelling with him fell to the ground as well, he says in Acts 26. I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew language, so we've got a little bit more detail here, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads. Now, this is odd, particularly if you don't know what a goad is. A goad is a long stick with a barb on it, like a hook. And bullock drivers would use it to drive the bullocks. And if they didn't go where they want, they got a fair whacking. And Christ is saying, I've been leading you and guiding you in a certain direction, and you are fighting against it, so I've got to whack you harder. And we read in this episode, and please, I don't want you to get the impression that Christ literally was whacking Saul. It's that pressure that was happening in his life. But whatever happened, as Saul experiences this bright light, he falls off his horse onto the ground. He got knocked off his horse. And so we go on and we read in verse 5, and he said, who are you, Lord? Which I just find intriguing, that he straight away, like, Lord. And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. And I find that intriguing, because who had Paul been persecuting? Christians. Can you see how personally Jesus took this? Can you see how Christ feels with his people? You're persecuting me. If we today can get just a glimpse of how much Christ feels about his church, I don't mean the building, I mean the person on your left and your right, the person in front of you and behind you. If you realise the deep commitment that Christ sees that we have with each other, I reckon it would change your world. That when we use expressions like brother, if we could get that, I reckon that would rock your world. Christ says, you've been persecuting me.